You can think of your ego like this ball that's kind of sitting inside of you that has different degrees of either stickiness or smoothness depending on how fragile or secure that ego is. A fragile ego will stick on things like feeling defensive or feeling threatened and have a harder time moving past things and getting over them. A more secure ego will be a lot more smooth, where things can come up or even come in and they kind of just slide right off. That nothing gets too stuck or lodged in there. So today we're going to talk about a fragile ego and what it means when we are struggling with a more insecure or fragile ego. We're also going to talk some about how to create a more secure, solid, and smooth ego. So stay tuned. I think you are going to get a lot out of this talk today. If you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you're back again, it is always good to have you here. Special shout out to my shifters. Really great to have you here today. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. The button's about right down there. Like the video if you get something out of it. That would be amazing. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a therapeutic coach, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, that you can get more information about in the description below. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And a fragile ego really is something that holds us back. Now, we talk a lot in our culture about ego and how if somebody has a big ego, that it's generally seen as a negative thing. And yes, that is true. And the truth is about a big ego, it's actually an overinflated ego. It's not a secure ego. There is a difference there. It's an overinflated ego that is an overcompensation for a more fragile or insecure ego. Generally speaking, our ego is just our sense of self, who we think we are inside. So we either have good thoughts and feelings about who we are inside, or we have not so good thoughts and feelings about who we are inside. And again, the more we struggle with who we are, the stickier that ego is, and the more things kind of sit in there and get lodged in there, and we have a harder time processing things, working through things, getting over things, not being triggered by things, not getting thrown off by things. But the more secure, solid that ego is, the more we genuinely feel comfortable and confident in who we are. And so we're not so rattled by things that are coming up around us, people that are coming up around us, and everything that's included in that. A truly secure ego doesn't make things all about that one person. So someone with a secure ego doesn't always focus on themselves. That's the opposite of a secure ego. That would be more of an insecure or fragile ego. A truly secure ego creates space for the self and for others in an open, curious, compassionate, and loving way. So now let's look at what some of those signs are of a more fragile ego. But a little caveat. If you go through the list and you find yourself ticking off some or all the boxes and realize that you do have a more fragile ego right now, this information is not so that you can beat yourself up or criticize yourself or feel down or bad about yourself. This is just information. And we use this information to gain insight so that we can start making helpful and constructive changes. That's all. If we don't really know what's going on, then we don't know what we can do something about. Okay? So as long as we're in agreement that we're not going to use this information to get down on ourselves, just to develop curious insight, then let's go through the list. The first sign of a more fragile ego is when someone is really defensive. So even when there's feedback that isn't particularly negative or meant to be overly critical, they still find themselves getting quite defensive, or maybe you find yourself getting quite defensive, that any little bit of feedback that isn't overt praise and recognition feels threatening in some way. The next sign of a more fragile ego is when someone has a lot of perfectionistic tendencies. Now, understanding that perfectionism is really about self-protection, because perfectionism says that if you can be without fault or flaw, then nobody can criticize you, nobody can look down on you, and ultimately, nobody can reject you. And at the same time, if you can perfect every area of your life, your house, your children, your job, your appearance, your aesthetic, whatever it is, then you can finally feel good about yourself, because you'll be able to see that you have created everything perfectly around you. But we know that perfectionism is just a fantasy and it does not exist. And if we are banking on external factors for our internal sense of self, then it is a losing battle, because our sense of self, our secure, strong, healthy, solid sense of self starts from within. The next sign of a more delicate or fragile ego is when someone is constantly craving attention. Now, a caveat to this, we all need connection and relationships to feel valued, to feel seen, to feel respected, to feel significant. That is what we are hardwired for. But there's a difference between that and always going out and craving attention. So if you notice that yourself or somebody that you know is always sort of seeking approval, or, always kind of making themselves the center of attention, and always just sort of getting all the eyes on them for good things or for bad things. If you're at somebody else's wedding and the person starts talking about all the tragedies in their own life, or you're at somebody else's baby shower and you announce to everyone that you just got engaged, or that your family's making a big move, or something like that, or someone that you know does that. So instead of judging that person or judging yourself, understand that there's some insecurities going on in there. So if we can approach others and ourselves with more gentle, compassionate curiosity instead of that judgment, it's going to go a lot further for everyone involved. The next sign of a more fragile ego is when someone is deferring decisions. Now, this is a little bit of a more complex one, because if you or someone you know is like, I don't know what to do, what should we do, or what should I choose, or what's the best option here, and always looking to somebody else, which is different than asking for other people's feedback in order to get some different perspectives, in order for you to make your own well kind of informed decision. That's different than deferring a decision, always saying, what do you think we should do? What do you think I should do? What should I pick? What should I choose? Where should I go? And getting them to make that decision for you, often that is about protecting the ego, because if somebody else makes that decision and it doesn't turn out well, then we can blame them rather than blame ourselves. We can say, well, I didn't make the decision. They said that I should do that, so it's not my fault, or it wasn't really me that failed. It was because they made that choice, and so I went along with it. So it really is a way to avoid our own fear of failure, to avoid our own self-criticism, to avoid our own sense that we did something wrong, and then how we're going to treat ourselves in the aftermath of that. Because chances are, if you are deferring your decisions to others, then you don't want to make your own decisions, because you are scared of how you are going to talk to or treat yourself if it doesn't go the way that you want it to. The next sign of a more fragile ego is when we or someone that we know is talking really negatively about other people. You've done it, I've done it, that way of trying to make ourselves feel better by putting somebody else down, by trying to boost ourselves up, by trying to make someone else feel small, or, saying things like, well, they're not really that great, or, they think that they're like better than everyone else, but they're really not, or, they got that new house, but it's not really that nice of a house. It's got all these problems. Or their job, they may have gotten this promotion, but it's really just because there was nobody else in the running. So they sort of just lucked out, right? Those little things that we say to kind of knock down somebody else's success, somebody else's goodness, what somebody else has, a goal that they reach, a way that they are living, a choice they're making, and we kind of just sort of knock it down in order to make ourselves feel better. But the truth is, what somebody else does or has or achieves or accomplishes really doesn't have anything to do with us. And we don't need to feel threatened by it. But a fragile ego will see somebody else's goodness as a threat to our own, instead of seeing that there is goodness available to everyone. That what somebody else has cannot take away from what we can have or the journey that we are on, unless we allow it to. And the only way that we allow it to is right up in here. The next sign of a fragile ego is, on the other side of talking negatively about others, often talking negatively about ourselves, really putting ourselves down, and even saying really negative things about ourselves to others. In a way, this can be to fish for those compliments, because our sense of self is so fragile and is in pain, is hurting, is weak. Then we're looking to others to try to make us feel better about ourselves by talking about all the things that are terrible about us, or the mistakes that we've made, or the shortcomings we have, or the failures that we have just embarked on, in order for other people to be like, no, you're really great, or you're amazing too, or, like, I think you're awesome, and you didn't deserve that, you deserve this, and right, or whatever that is, when we're intentionally trying to splay out all of our shortcomings in order for somebody else to counter them and say good things, so that we can maybe hopefully feel good about ourselves, and understanding that, yes, getting positive feedback, getting recognition, praise, and approval is an important thing about being a human being. But if we are only deflecting our sense of self to others' words about us, then it is a sign of both a fragile ego, an insecure sense of self, and it is actually not going to create any lasting changes or remarkable shifts in our own sense of self, because that, my friends, is an inside job. The next sign of a fragile ego is all that comparison. It's so easy in this day and age, when we can see other people's lives, or at least other people's curated version of their lives, and we can make what other people have as a reason to feel bad about ourselves. And we compare ourselves, and we're like, they have all that, and I don't have that, and what's wrong with me, and why are they so great? Why do they get to have that? Why don't I get to have that? Right? Why are they so perfect? Why is their life so good? Why is mine so bad? Why are their kids like this, or their partner like that, or their family gatherings like this, or their house like that? Whatever that is, where we get stuck in that comparison, and again, making ourselves feel bad when we look at what somebody else has that appears to be good, instead of again realizing that what somebody else has cannot take away from who we are or what we have, other than right up in here. So catching those things, catching them when they show up, because they can be sneaky. It can be little things like, you can start to feel threatened or insecure when your best friend talks about having fun with another friend. It can show up when your sister talks about a promotion that she just got, and you don't really feel happy for her, you feel jealous. When a parent seems to be giving more attention to one of your siblings, even as adults, this stuff still comes up, and you've probably experienced, I know I definitely have, when a parent seems to be giving one of your siblings more attention, you can feel jealous, you can feel threatened, you can get defensive, you can get upset. Or when someone else seems to have more than you or be doing better than you, you use that as a reason to feel bad about yourself. Whenever we feel like there's this discrepancy between someone else getting more than what we're getting, and use that as a reason to get angry or defensive or upset. Now, as a caveat, real injustice is a thing that we need to be fighting for and working towards in our society. Just that little disclaimer statement, but I'm talking about more of these ego-based things. When jealousy shows up, when comparison shows up, when we get defensive or feel threatened by something, taking a minute, taking a step back, and checking in with yourself. Asking yourself, what's coming up for me right now? What's feeling insecure? What's feeling threatened? What's feeling bad? What am I making this mean? What thoughts are coming up, and how am I putting myself down in this moment? How am I making myself feel less than in this moment? How am I using this circumstance to feel bad about myself in some way? Taking a minute with that, starting first with identifying when these ego things show up and paying attention and say, hey, ego, what are you sticking to? Noticing when those things are coming in and sticking and asking, ego, what are we sticking to right now? And do we need to? Start with that. And then taking this a little bit deeper by building up a more secure sense of self begins with building trust within ourselves. Like any secure, solid relationship, it begins with trust with others and again with ourselves. The Simple Steps to Self-Trust, it's a document. I have it in the description below for you. You can grab that if you're ready to take this work deeper and start building that more secure sense of self. Noticing if you are struggling with any of these things, this is insight that we are then going to turn into constructive action. This isn't an excuse to be hard on yourself, to get down on yourself, to be critical or condemning of yourself. Approach this with compassionate curiosity and go from there. Grab the Simple Steps to Self-Trust. Get more information about the Shift Society in the description below. Let me know, where are you at? What are your thoughts? Would love to hear it. Always love hearing your thoughts in the comment section. Until next time, be good to yourself, be good to those around you, and take good care.